Okay, moving on to the concluding portion of this workshop. Okay, the first thing to keep in mind is that there is the assignment 2 which needs to be done. You have already done the following activities. What would be your plan? What strategies would you use? How do you ensure? So what you need to do is to revise and submit your answers through this form. I will just be putting the link in the chat. So this is not the same form as assignment 1. Okay, so this is the link for assignment 2, and once again, as before, you can answer the questions with respect to a master's student if that makes more sense for you. Okay, so now what all have we discussed in this workshop? So we have on day 1 we have looked at the PhD continuum, we have looked at what's the PhD, we have looked at guide student alignment, identifying your philosophy, and you have done the home assignment 1. On day 2, that's today, what we have looked at is the guiding process. We have looked at some common examples, we have looked at some common concerns, and the slides for day 2 are also available. I will put that in the chat too. So now coming to some of more philosophical points. Okay, so here is some beliefs that I hold. So this is very personal, and I don't expect that this will be common to many people, or you may or may not subscribe to it. I am just sharing them with you as one data point that you can consider. So one belief that I have is I am a teacher who also does research. I am not a researcher who also teaches, and this defines a lot of decisions that I make. Another belief that I hold is that guiding PhD students is a sacred responsibility, and it's not something that I take lightly. So I must do my best to facilitate the students' growth in their intended directions. A third belief that I have is that the delta of growth for the student matters more than the quantum of the research contribution. So I have often compromised on the quality of the research publication for the sake of the students' growth. And there are cons with having such beliefs, and I accept the cons of my position on the continuum. So what I would recommend to you is to state your own beliefs. These happen to be mine, which is an example. State your own beliefs and see whether you can accept the cons of that position, because the pros of the position outweigh the cons in that case. Okay. Some principles that I follow. One very important one, as many of you have also pointed out, is know your student. So what drives them, where do they want to go, what are their strengths, what other strengths do they need to build in order to get there, and so on. So why I do this? Because it helps me to plan learning experiences that help them towards their goal beyond the scope of the PhD topic also. The second principle that I follow is students first, other work later. So PhD students have the highest priority on my time, and if I am busy, I will give the nearest available slot. So this is again something that as a guide one has to consciously keep in mind, because one can get busy with many things, and often students will hesitate to approach you when they see that you are very busy. So it is important to explicitly tell them that they can discuss any topic with you at any time for any duration, and so on. So why I do this is because I get satisfaction from seeing the growth of an individual student. The third principle that I follow is guide proactively and to spend time with the student. So look at what the student needs to learn, how to make it happen, how much scaffolding to provide, what are alternatives, and so on. So here again, as a guide, I take responsibility for the student's growth. The student is after all investing at least 3 to 5 years of their time in working with you. So I have to do my due diligence for ensuring that that growth happens. Okay. Then here is a summary of actions that I do. I maintain my own notes, plans, alternatives and timelines for the thesis. I talk to colleagues frequently to get their feedback on the thesis. I involve the student in decision making. I have regular weekly meetings with the student. I keep going till there are a few aha moments in the thesis. Now what's this aha moment? So aha moment is when we recognize if some idea has merit with respect to the problem or the solution or the findings. So there has to be something new, some novelty, and suddenly you find that okay, this is the key point on which the thesis can be built around. And I continue to think and plan about the student's thesis till I can see the finish line. So the bottom line for me is that if you are not losing sleep over your student's thesis, you are not doing your job. Okay, here's some more personal stuff. This is my research position. It's a page from my journal from 20 years ago, and I'm not going to read it out or explain it. You can take a look at it in the slides. Okay, and finally the disclaimers. Okay, these answers once again are my personal philosophy and approach. I am not advocating that you adopt them. I am presenting them to you as an example answers to the questions. What you need to do is to come up with your own answers to the questions, your own beliefs, your own positions and so on. Other faculty including you may disagree with my position, that's fine. There are multiple approaches with each with its own pros and cons. Do what works for you. Finally, I am not making any claims of novelty, effectiveness or efficiency about my approach. Okay, all I am saying is that this is what works for me and I am sharing it with you in the hope that it also some of it is useful for you. Okay, so now we can take a minute to give some feedback on this session and then we will go into the live interaction. Okay, I see that there are a number of responses. Let me enable the, okay, so there are a number of responses which I will go through later, and I have enabled the responses so that you can also see each other's responses and see that if there are points that they have mentioned that you have not mentioned, which you can take up. Okay, so now moving on to the last part.